I absolutely love being outside in the wintertime.
Tonight.
Bold, North.
Being bold and embracing the cold.
I want it so cold for the Super Bowl.
Pro football's biggest stage in a winter climate.
The world will get to see what we can do here in Minnesota, and that's what it's all about.
A place where downtown streets are turned into a cross-country skiing course.
I caught one that was that big.
All right, here we go.
For the next half hour.
It was a rush. I thought I was going to have a panic attack.
Fan mobile.
How thousands of volunteers from across the nation explain Minnesota nice.
Me and about 30,000 other people applied for those jobs.
As 6 News explores the ways a northern city entertains the fans outside the game.
Will you look at ice differently for the rest of your life now?
I think I'm going to order my sodas without ice from now on.
Brian Mastre reports. Super Weekend Blitz, sponsored by Woodhouse Auto Family. And now, live from the Twin Cities, Brian Mastre.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our live coverage of the events leading up to the big game, Super Bowl 52, where cold and snow are the centerpieces to the party. Can you believe we're just, 47 hours away from the big game and kickoff? We were at the stadium the other day. It's a $1.1 billion behemoth. It looks great, but it does have a roof, so those fans and the players inside clearly will have a temperature-controlled climate. Now, by Sunday night, either Philadelphia will be crowned champs for the first time ever, or New England will continue its dynasty. Now, Super Bowl week really is about below freezing temperatures here. Now, you would think that would keep volunteers away, right? That's not the case. 6 hours from the Super Bowl and inside the Clarinda, Iowa Regional Health Center.
I've been excited about this all year long.
We find Sue Raywald Hayes volunteering in the hospital gift shop.
All my friends thought I was crazy, but that's okay.
She was one of 30,000 people to submit applications to help out at the Super Bowl in her home state of Minnesota.
I think my video set me apart because it wasn't upside down. It was laying, my whole video was laying on its side.
And even though her cell phone video about why she liked Minnesota was hard on the neck, it was submitted sideways. The Super Bowl host committee picked her as one of its 10,000 volunteers.
They came up with Bold North.
She immediately showed off her swag to her Iowa friends. Weeks later,
I got my gear. Yay! Because you got to get that strap through that.
The Minnesota native and Minnesota Viking fans' first official assignment, helping at the free ice skating rink in downtown Minneapolis as part of Super Bowl Live.
I know you can take a bunch of pictures on the other side over there. There's a photo op.
Even though her home team missed out on the big game, Sue is committed to making Super Bowl memories for other fans.
It was a hard few days. Proud of the team anyway. It was really disappointing, but I'm trying to get past that. Yes, I wanted my Vikings to be in the Super Bowl, but it didn't happen.
No, it's an honor to be able to represent.
Stan Eckhart is another Super Bowl volunteer. Usually this time of year, he's doing stats for the Omaha Lancers hockey team. It's been that way since 1989. His first gig at the Super Bowl? Working the zip line event over the Mississippi River.
I grew up in a small town in southern Minnesota, and one of the things we learned at an early age is service to community. Be it Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, 4-H. Being in a small town, you had to get involved. And so when the opportunity came for the Super Bowl being in Minnesota, it's like, you got to get up there and get back to my home state and show Minnesota nice, and along with that, bring a little Nebraska nice with it.
From Stan to Sue.
The things you do for your sister.
Just two of many examples of those in our neighborhoods giving back to where they grew up. So Minneapolis largely took its cues from the volunteer effort in last year's Super Bowl in Houston. That was largely mirrored after the London Games of 2012, where they too brought together a lot of volunteers. Minneapolis, like Houston, got together again, 10,000 people to help out. The cold doesn't get much more in your face than when a downtown Minneapolis street is closed and converted to a cross-country skiing course. Super Bowl Live is 8 blocks of free outdoor entertainment aimed at families.
Ready? 1, 2, 3.
A place where you can capture the Hallmark magic in a snow globe.
Yeah.
So that's your own Hallmark moment?
It is, yes.
Look at all the people waiting to see the evening performers on the main stage. This is free too. I would imagine it even more congested if the hometown team Vikings had made it to the Super Bowl.
Where are my Eagles fans out there? All right, where are my Patriots fans? Oh, come on, I thought we were Minnesota nice.
Fans are working on it. Minnesota, who has never won a Super Bowl, would have been the first team to play in their home stadium for the big game. As you can imagine, with the extra hundreds of thousands of people converging on the Bold North, security is everywhere. The ones who are obvious and the ones not so much. Everyone realizes the Super Bowl will always be a target. Now that won't much matter to the 66,000 people who have a ticket and are going to the game. That's because they have to go on Sunday to the Mall of America. Security screening will happen there, then they'll get on light rail that will take them to a secure area and get them into the stadium, and that light rail is only operating that route for people who have a ticket. So what do you know? It is a high of 10 degrees here as we're standing in front of a snow sculpture of celebrating Super Bowl 52, so we thought what better way than to celebrate with some ice.
Every 15 to 20 years, we decide to build an ice palace, and this is the year.
In Minnesota's capital city of St. Paul, just to the east of Minneapolis, a tradition began more than a century ago to prove visitors wrong.
There were some tourists and newspaper that came to visit Minnesota, and it was so cold and snowy that they went back and reported that no one should ever live in Minnesota.
Instead of moving or sulking at the bad reviews of the 1880s, Minnesotans came together.
This is the 132nd season.
They started this, the St. Paul Winter Carnival. It's dubbed the coolest celebration on earth.
We have over 5,000 blocks.
And in the land of 10,000 lakes.
The last block of ice that was cut out of Spicer, Minnesota, there was the block number 5,000, and this is what we found.
There are 10 times as many fish stories.
Yeah, one of the St. Paul Winter Carnival kids walked by and pointed it out. We couldn't believe it.
That's a walleye.
That is way cool.
Frozen in a block of ice cut from Green Lake, Minnesota.
That's the fish I didn't catch.
And now attraction number 1 at this year's Ecolab Ice Palace.
Now you don't need a fishing pole.
No.
You just need an ice pick.
Yeah.
Great idea.
Oh, I don't know.
The penny came after the fact.
Yeah, we nicknamed him. He's Wally.
Wally the walleye.
Wally the walleye.
It's a tradition to stick coins on ice blocks at the festival.
It's incredible. It's Minnesota bold. We're going to wait till it warms up, have a fish fry.
Coincidentally, the walleye is Minnesota's state fish.
Once it defrosts, it's probably good.
Well, you got to give it mouth to mouth.
I don't think it'll be
And I'm not
alive.
giving it mouth to mouth.
It's pretty frozen.
You go look at the fish again, honey.
I wonder, what would the critics from 100 plus years ago think of this?
The world's watching Wally.
It likely doesn't matter. The proof are the 5.5 million people who live here.
Oh, that's a keeper. I wonder if it thaws out, if it actually is alive. We're going to find out in April.
I can't wait to see, and I'm sure they will tell me how Wally the walleye tastes. So Wally the walleye, just one of the bold North stories originating here as we get closer to the Super Bowl.
Coming up.
All right, here we go.
A staple of tropical vacations set up in the cold.
Say hi to Omaha.
Wait until you hear how many signed up.
No injuries yet. We're going to go hit the beer tent and see what happens.
A nearby tournament on a frozen lake, and it has nothing to do with fishing. Plus, what happens when too much sun reaches ice sculptures?
If you try to dive in and get an eye, you might go too far, and then all of a sudden you're losing your face.
When Brian Mastre reports Super Weekend Blitz, sponsored by Woodhouse Auto Family, returns. You're watching Brian Mastre Reports Super Weekend Blitz, sponsored by Woodhouse Auto Family.
The Metrodome is no more. In its place, in the same downtown spot, U.S. Bank Stadium, hosting a Super Bowl in just its second year open. I still remember covering the Twins winning the 1991 World Series at the Dome as an intern. The host committee has raised more than $50 million in private funds to cover the cost of entertaining the public outside the stadium and to show off the state. It's not just downtown Minneapolis that's all in with the cold equals fun idea, but the surrounding communities as well. Perhaps this scene symbolizes a love for cold weather better than any other during Super Bowl week.
It's invigorating, to be honest with you. To be out here, it's amazing.
2,500 players from around the country playing January hockey on Lake Nokomis in South Minneapolis.
I don't care much for summer. This is what I love. Just hanging outside, watching hockey, wintertime. I love it.
It's the Labatt Blue U.S. Pond Hockey Championships, where the warning labels drip irony. Don't forget, water is slippery when frozen.
This is our first time for all of us.
This team in the over 40 category traveled from Connecticut to play.
I'm the young guy here, 46 years old of the bunch. The youngest guy with the least amount of hair.
We're in terrible shape, and you play out in this cold weather, and you know how bad you are.
Pond hockey is a little different than what we're used to. It's 4-on-4. There is no goalie, and you're shooting into a different sort of a net. The goal is simply a wooden box where you aim for the holes in the corners.
Minnesota.
In a state where learning to walk competes with learning to skate, arranging 22 rinks on a frozen lake for a hockey tournament seems normal.
I grew up on a lake, so my dad would plow an area for us out on the lake, so I got kind of used to it.
Organizers know that walking on 20 inches of ice freaks out some newcomers.
It is a little nerve-wracking, you know. Some teams that have come in, especially from the southern states, and watching them go out the first time and being on water and just can't really understand that or fathom that.
Those teams probably don't know what to think when they see someone like 3-year-old Owen Showalter, where winter is in his veins. Pond hockey doesn't yet have a division for his age. Does it feel weird being on top of a lake playing hockey?
Yeah! Woo!
I couldn't have said it, Owen, any better. Feel like doing that out here. Now, the team names are so original for pond hockey championships. Here's my favorite. They are called Good Thing We Work in Orthopedics.
Coming up, thrill seekers climb 15 stories to cross the Mississippi River.
We did it!
See what happens when one of them gets stuck.
And your new coach, his name is Frost.
Frost, yeah.
I can take apropos.
Plus the sad case of a missing face mask on an ice sculpture. When this 6 News special returns, you're watching Brian Mastre Reports Super Weekend Blitz, sponsored by Woodhouse Auto Family. You're watching Brian Mastre Reports Super Weekend Blitz, sponsored by Woodhouse Auto Family.
At the state fairgrounds, the winter theme of love continues. In the heartland, we're all familiar with the corn maze. Here in Minnesota, you can get lost in the snow maze. Now, this next attraction for the Super Bowl is something we're used to in a tropical climate, not a Minnesota winter. Even on Nicollet Island in Minnesota, the Omaha connections are around every corner.
My dad's dad was the city attorney in Omaha.
He's a volunteer for one of the biggest sidebar Super Bowl attractions, a zip line across the Mississippi River.
We can gear you up, though.
Okay. It took me a half hour to get geared up, a helmet, a harness,
Piece of cake.
One final check.
and several GoPro cameras to watch my simulated free fall.
Say hi to Omaha.
First, though, I need to get to the top. No elevator here.
Now I have 15 flights of stairs to walk, so all the way up there.
The event sold out in minutes. 10,000 people paid $30 each to go for a ride this week.
Almost there.
Now it's my turn.
How far is the trip across here? 750 feet. How fast do we go? How fast? 30 miles an hour. 30 miles an hour?
From the scaffolding, the scenery is breathtaking.
Just gonna step forward onto the steps here.
After another safety check, the only instructions for me is there are no real rules once you're locked in.
You can spin around, you can flip upside down, you can do whatever you want. Go ahead, pick up your feet. Away you go. All right, right there. All right, here we go.
That's the Mississippi River, 100 feet below. That would be a cold swim. The zip line spins me as if to make sure I soak up the entire view. After all, the ride takes just 20 seconds. The automatic braking system caught me by surprise.
That's it.
And then the Zip Trek crew reeled me in.
We should do this across the Missouri River in Omaha.
As I leave.
You know what? This walking down is a lot easier.
I'm thankful we recorded this last Friday, before the bitter cold arrived.
It's pretty exhilarating, but then again, it's in the mid-40s right now. I can't imagine what it'll be like next week.
By the way, a few minutes after my ride ended, someone got stuck. Cruz had to go get her. She got to take in the view longer than anyone else, although I'm not sure she sees it that way. Otherwise, the Bold North zip line received rave reviews from the first riders.
How was it? Oh, it's fabulous. I'm gonna go across and do it again.
It was awesome. I'll do it again. Sign me up. It was fast. It was very exhilarating. I don't know, high above the water there. We were looking for the rescue boats, but guess we didn't need them.
Conquered some fears, baby. That's it.
The problem was it went too fast.
And even those who couldn't get a ticket, stand by to take in the Super Bowl experience.
Seems like frostbite and a zip line will go together well this weekend.
The crowds in downtown Minneapolis continue to grow as we move closer to Super Bowl Sunday. Up next, an unusual wish from one Minnesotan to the rest of us.
You're watching Brian Mastre Reports Super Weekend Blitz, sponsored by Woodhouse Auto Family. We're back after the break. You're watching Brian Mastre Reports Super Weekend Blitz, sponsored by Woodhouse Auto Family.
You know how Omaha's first snow melts rather quickly? In Minnesota, that sometimes doesn't happen until spring. In Minneapolis, a big winter attraction in the Bold North is Minnehaha Falls. Yes, a frozen waterfall. Makes for a great photograph.
Now, fans for Super Bowl 52 have a great way downtown of staying warm. Here's how. The buildings are all connected by skyways. They're heated and they offer protection from the cold. Most of the buildings there are protected that way, so you can take comfort in knowing that. Of course, if you get lost, the Crew 52 committee can help you navigate your way.
Ice carvers from around the country have flooded Minnesota to show off their talents. The ice blocks appropriately come from a company called Minnesota Ice here. The flamethrower makes the ice clearer. Last Friday, it got so warm in Minneapolis that a face mask melted off one of the ice players. No need to worry about that today, or even the weekend. Even though Viking fans seem to be throwing a party for someone else this weekend, the team's iconic horn is on display. How's it go again?
This is actually the skull horn for the Vikings to represent the Vikings, the city, for the Super Bowl.
So you always hear the
roo. Not Ricola, but roo.
It's all proof it takes a special talent to turn ice into art.
It was probably a good call that they would not let me touch that chainsaw because, yeah, it would have looked even worse than some of the stuff that got melted. Now, before we go, I want to share one Minnesotan's take, one Minnesotan's wish for all of us this Super Bowl.
I want it so cold for the Super Bowl. I want it so cold and a foot of snow. But welcome to Minnesota.
Pam, you got part of that equation, right? You wanted a foot of snow. That kind of fell about a week before we got here. But you are getting the bitter cold temperatures. So I guess, thank you. Is that what we're supposed to say? Well, thanks for spending this half hour with us as we explored what makes Minnesota so bold for Super Bowl 52. We didn't even get to a few things. Mall of America, Prince. We didn't get in depth to Wabasha and Grumpy Old Men, a great film. Perhaps we can all do that another time. For Jim Hinchick, who is behind the camera, I'm Brian Mastre reporting live from the Twin Cities. Enjoy the game, everyone, and enjoy the commercials.